welcome to episode 3 of our serial No Evil. I'm your narrator, Chad. If you haven't listened to episodes 1 and 2, please go back and check those out. This episode encompasses chapters 4 and 5 of No Evil. On the last episode, Sam agreed to meet with Case, but in the meantime headed to work. This episode picks up with the introduction of a new character, Roger. Let's escape. Roger heard the calls but kept on drinking. It was all he'd done since leaving Helping Hearts. Most of the money he'd been saving for his suit went towards the purchase of half a dozen bottles of Irish whiskey, and he didn't intend to stop his binge for anything. Half-understood whispers of long-forgotten sorrows embedded themselves like darts in his heart. But Roger drank on. All he wanted to do was forget. He was worthless anyway. No suit would clean the stain of him. The cold here was exacerbated by the damp. The blankets he had were all half wet and frozen on his cot. He thought he might die of hypothermia before he could even get through the last bottle. Even so, as far as Roger was concerned, the storm sewer was a palace. Sure, there were drawbacks, the damp and the cold most prominently, but he had a plan for that. The smell he dealt with by hanging car air fresheners in every corner. The solitude was the real selling point for him. He was in the business of being alone at the moment, and people barely even looked at him in the street, let alone in the sewer. He thought he'd be safe in expecting to have few visitors. Though, he had to admit, the cold was getting to him, and the colder he got, the harder it was to resist the voices. He took another swig from the long-necked green bottle and then sat it down. Roger climbed the ladder to the grate and pushed it aside. He pulled himself up through the opening and clumsily dragged the cover halfway over the grate again. The abandoned building was what initially drew him here. He figured he could get inside easily enough and have a nice warm place to sleep. When he arrived, a bag full of heavy bottles in tow, he'd seen people inside arguing, and he had to run for it. But before he did, he'd seen one of the men place a portable heater in a box and shove it under a desk. Roger wasn't sure if these were new tenants settling in or old ones readying to leave, but he decided to wait for nightfall when they might be gone. He stumbled to the back door of the place and pulled at it as if it would be open. It wasn't. He hadn't yet formed a plan B when, in his mind, he heard another voice call. This was different than the others. A raspy, whisper yell.
Find him! Find them! End this!
The voice was as cheerfully disdainful as ever. Roger looked back towards the sewer and licked his lips. Maybe one more sip would help him formulate a solution. No. He had to get to the heater. Roger had all intention of entering the building quietly, snatching the heater, and leaving without a sound. With alcohol added to the mix, his best intentions were buried in a deep fog of drunken fear. He picked up a cinder block that had been used for a step up to the back door and threw it as hard as he could at the window. Roger watched the glass explode silently into tiny shards, and the cinder block into 3 large ones. Roger took a few flustered glances around. The window had a cage in front of it. It hadn't stopped the window from breaking, but it was strong enough that Roger's throw hadn't dislodged it. He just hoped nobody heard. Despite the cold, Roger felt the hot sun on his neck, and he bent to gather the pieces of cinder block for another throw. He turned and looked to the sky and saw the sun had just crested the top of a building and was illuminating the entire alley.
Think, Roger boy. What time is it? Think, you silly bastard. You have to find them all. Sacrifice. Sever the link. You know the world's a more.
It was pitch dark when he'd exited the sewer. The stars were out, and there wasn't a hint of dawn. Roger stopped. A rumble. He could feel something coming. He sensed vibration in the ground. The voice spoke again.
Find him. Find him before he finds you.
The sing-song voice made him want to vomit. When it spoke, it felt like someone had pressed a speaker to his chest and turned the bass way up. He dropped a piece of the block and tore back to the sewer. His battered dress shoes skidded on the wet asphalt, and he slid to the cover like he was stealing home. The ground trembled noticeably for a long time. Roger drank. He took his half-wet, half-frozen blankets and wrapped them around himself. He drank. He thought of Helping Hearts, and he drank some more. Sleep came. It was restless sleep, and Roger dreamed of basketballs filled with stars, orbs within orbs. and of disembodied voices. He woke with the bottle still in his hand. He remembered finishing it, but didn't quite recall why he didn't want to put it down. He pushed up from the cot, stumbled, and fell back on his ass. He tossed the empty bottle aside and picked up another from the concrete ledge. His head was pounding. The only hangover cure Roger knew was more alcohol, and he had plenty. When he finally managed to push to his feet, he saw through the grate that the sun was rising again. He could tell by the angle of the orange light shining through the open slats. The raspy voice came again. It told him to come to the city square. He felt it want to pull him there. He ignored the crescendo of guilt he felt and continued on drinking, but for a moment. Then he paced back and forth. The sing-song voice told Roger to find them. The raspy whisper yell told him to come. Roger drank. It's hell when the only sound you can hear are the voices in your own mind. He dissected the thought for what felt like a couple of hours. When he looked out the grate again, he saw it was dark.
What the hell is this?
Roger's slurred voice thudded hollowly in the concrete room. He couldn't hear it, but he could hear the call go out again. It told him the time was coming. He would miss it if he didn't go. He took another long swig from the bottle, drained it, and smashed it in the corner. He grabbed the last bottle, shoved it into his coat pocket, and climbed the ladder again. The sky was black and starless. The only sliver of light came from a reflection on a tall building. Roger walked toward it. His eyes were so focused on the reflection, he nearly toppled over the curb. He was moving now. His legs were running. His mind was still far behind him in a field of barley. The image of tall, golden grain flashed in his mind, and Roger could almost taste the crisp country air. His legs carried him within a few blocks of the city square before his stomach forced him to stop. A gurgling pocket formed inside his gut, and a second later, Roger was pouring everything he drank that day back out into the street. He wiped his mouth and stumbled on towards the spire. He could see two pillars of light rising in the square, towering over it. Suddenly aware that the light beams were the only lights on in the city, Roger tensed.
Get there. Get there. You'll only have one shot to do it.
Roger didn't know what he was supposed to do, but his legs carried him forward. He felt like he was being guided, no, driven somewhere, as if possessed, and the poltergeist had the wheel. He reached City Hall a short time later. Then the city seemed to lurch up. Roger heard no sound, but the ground shook. He fell into the street, and as he rolled to push himself back on his feet, he saw a series of buildings collapse in a row. They were swallowed by fire. As he ran toward City Hall, the sun rose. The voice told him to get to the 10th floor.
It's time to play your part.
Roger imagined it was a concert. Maybe it was all a dream, and he was the star of the show. He played some accordion in college. He could bust out some of the old classics. People still love accordion, right? When Roger pushed through the door and onto the 10th floor, he saw a bright light coming from the other side of the room. The open window allowed it to grow frigid. It seemed colder in here than outside, and he could see his breath. There were spotlights in a stage, all right. There were 3 men. One without hands, one without clarity, and one without himself. The voice sang again.
He's been consumed.
The man without clarity was on the ground. The man without himself stood above him, huffing. The voice told Roger he was the door. It was time to close it. There was a flash of light beyond him, all through him. The man on the stage collapsed. For a moment, Roger thought he saw smiling teeth and spines. 2 sneering mouths, translucent and fluid, rushed into him. The image disappeared, and Roger only saw the dead and mutilated in the city, all of them dead. His tears were still fresh when the tingling sensation began at his feet. They melted, without pain, into a pool of thick blood. Roger felt strangely complete. The empty space he'd felt in his stomach for so many years was gone. He felt powerful, and at the same time, beyond the need for it. The puddle grew to include his shins, and then his knees. It reached his head, and he was gone from this world. Chapter 5. Sam walked through the gate. The factory was surrounded by tall chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. The fence enclosed the entire building and parking lot. Sam had always thought it seemed like excessive security for a pickle-packing plant, Pointless, too, because they always left the unmanned front gate open. It was going to be another long night. Sam usually worked a forklift, loading pallets of finished product into trucks to be shipped. Now he couldn't trust himself. One night he nearly clobbered someone because he was dozing. He asked to be assigned to permanent sanitation and, because his boss seemed to like him, at least enough not to fire him when the rumors of Sam's drug use started, he'd been able to keep working. The job basically consisted of draining brine tanks and scrubbing. He thought he could handle that without killing anyone. Sam took his jacket off and hung it in the break room. "You on sanitation again tonight, Money?" The shift leader, a slightly paunchy man with a haphazard comb-over, had taken to calling Sam Money. "Hey, Carlos. Yeah." Sam knew Carlos went through an excruciatingly unpleasant divorce. People at the pickle plant talk. That was as much as Sam knew about him. But Carlos was as close as Sam had to a friend at work. He gave everyone nicknames and was always rah-rahing the team. He was a bit much, but he meant well. "Ready to take this thing into overdrive, Money?" "I don't know what that means, but hey, why not?" "That's the spirit. Don't let the pickles win." "Yes, that's always my fear too, the pickles winning. Smug bastards." "So, what's been going on? You feeling okay? You need help with anything?" Carlos asked. Sam appreciated the sentiment, which he surmised was genuine and not fishing. Carlos had likely heard the rumors about him. Unlike many at the plant who were always digging for dirt, Carlos seemed legitimately concerned. "Just, having some trouble adjusting to nights, I think," Sam lied. "Yeah, it does take a bit of getting used to say the least. I do have some advice, though." Sam leaned in. "Don't start relying on sleeping pills for this. I'm serious. I think they fucked up my wife, to be honest. She was never the same after she started, always blaming me for leaving the kettle on. I never touched the fucking thing, you know what I mean? I think I know where you're going, and you don't have to worry. I can handle myself." "Well, just..." Carlos trailed off. He gave Sam a shrugging look, and Sam nodded. "Yeah, I know. Hey, it's time." Sam pointed to the clock. "Let's get to it." "Money, you're on the money." A huge smile came over Carlos's face, and he gave Sam a playful slap on the back. When he did, Sam almost toppled forward. A flash of red lightning splayed across his vision, and his eyes blurred at the edges. White speckles danced in his eyes. The room darkened, and shapes appeared and floated about his view. A hand reached into his face, and Sam batted it away. Suddenly overcome with terror, he let out a yelp. "No!" Sam's heart pounded. As quickly as it had blurred, his vision cleared. Carlos was over him, waving a hand, his eyes bulging and face almost maroon. "Fuck! Someone get a doctor!" he said. No, I'm fine. I just lost my balance." "The hell you did," said a voice behind them. Sam's boss had seen the commotion. He looked scared and angry. "Sam, let's go. I want to speak to you privately." "Just say what you need to say," said Sam, pushing himself to his knees and then to his feet. "Fine. I don't think you'd be surprised to hear people have been talking. There's a lot of concern that you might be on drugs, and from what I've seen, I really don't think it's a question anymore. Hank, please, I need this job. I'm not on drugs, I'm just having some trouble sleeping. I just need some rest, really. Look, I'm not going to fire you. You're going to take 2 weeks, unpaid, and if you can come back after that, looking healthy, you can come back to work." "Thank you," Sam said. It was a cold and long walk back to his apartment, but the fresh air seemed to do Sam some good. When he got home, he flicked on all the lights and collapsed into the mess of blankets and pillows covering his bed. Sleep came quickly. When he finally opened his eyes again, Sam worried it was a dream. It was only about 10:30 when he got back. Now the sun was high and bright, shining through his bamboo blinds. He had worked nights for 3 years, and this was the best sleep he'd had in all that time. All that time spent living in haze, but today he felt clear. It felt like camping when he was a kid. The warmth of the summer sun, the fresh and fragrant air, laying in long grass and watching white fluffy clouds speed by in an amazing blue sky. Sam felt a smile form. He rushed to the bathroom and looked at himself smiling. He opened the medicine cabinet and looked at the bottle of pills. He took the bottle and threw it in the trash. Carlos says you boys must go. I trust him. You really haven't done me much good anyway. Saying goodbye to pills. Sam thought he really must be an addict. He didn't want to admit it to anyone, least of all himself, but it was true. He hadn't slept in 3 years without taking one first. Maybe it was just time to quit. Cold turkey, they say. Cold turkey sandwich, Sam thought. Sam's stomach growled, and he suddenly realized he'd only eaten soda crackers and peanut butter in the last 3 days. He looked at the clock. It was already noon. Shit! You completely forgot about Case. Fuck! He thrust his hand in his pocket and looked at his cell phone. 5 missed calls and half a dozen texts from Case. Damn! Sam got almost all the way to the door of his apartment before something on the counter caught his eye. A brown paper bag. He walked over to it and saw a post-it note stuck to the top. Have a bagel on me. Give me a call when you get up. Case. Of course. Sam had forgotten he'd given Case a spare key to his apartment. Must have been years ago, just after Nicole left. Sam thrust open the bag and grabbed the bagel. The first bite almost hurt, saliva immediately pooling in his mouth. Warm cream cheese coated his tongue, and Sam savored it. He grabbed his cell phone and returned to Case's call. Sam, you okay? Yes. Great, actually. I finally slept. Thanks for the bagel, it's delicious. No worries. I'm glad you finally got some rest. You look like cold shit. Such a charmer. Yeah. Anyway, my buddy at the sleep clinic says we can come by any time tonight. So you ready? Well, I kind of thought I wouldn't really need to go anymore. Just got a full 12 hours, I think, and listen, that's great. But I think it's best if you come down anyway. Still have the address? Yeah, I have it, but why? Good. Be there tonight. Okay. Case hung up. And that does it for chapters 4 and 5, episode 3 of our serial No Evil. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you like what you hear, please follow, like, subscribe, click the bell, do all the social media things. Tell your siblings. Tell your friends' siblings. Stencil a billboard on a sultry Saturday and serenade some seniors sipping sangria while Paul Anka sings Lonely Boy. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the next escape.